Hello my friends, welcome to What Culture Wrestling. My name is Simon Miller, and who's ready to have a row in the comments? I certainly am. I'll be in there throwing my fisticuffs because yes, today we are going to go through every single pay-per-view from the last 30 years, or at least every single year, and determine what was the best pay-per-view of that 12 months. And you already don't agree, you don't even know that, but your brain is going to tell you as soon as I say entry number this, and then the name of said show. But we got a long way to go, so sit down, grab yourself a coffee or a tea, and let's do it. Number 31, WrestleMania 6 in 1990. You can't beat nostalgia, you just can't. You can get a stick and you can wave it away, but nostalgia's like really agile and athletic, and it will get out the way. And you can probably find other pay-per-views in 1990 that had better in-ring action, but nothing will make your heart go brum bum bum than WrestleMania 6. You did have solid matches like Jake Roberts versus Ted DiBiase, and of course the Rockers were just on fire during this period. But let's not pretend otherwise. This was all about Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. Two just massive baby faces and massive good guys finally clashing in the squared circle to the point you had thousands of people in attendance going, I don't really know who to root for here. This is really difficult. And you had the WWF title and you had the Intercontinental title. This was absolute genius. And sure, after the fact, it didn't really work out with the Ultimate Warrior, but you don't have to worry about that now. It just brought all the hype and all the excitement you want after you've dropped $700 on a pay-per-view. If you haven't figured it out, I love it. Number 30, WCW WrestleWar in 1991. And this is mostly because of War Games, a concept and a match type you may be more familiar with in the modern day thanks to NXT. It was originated by WCW, and it's just fantastic, especially here thanks to the crazy brain of Brian Pillman. I mean, we're so used to people using the roof of steel cages now, it's just commonplace, but that wasn't going down in 1991, and Pillman looked like, I'm gonna use it as if it's a weapon. Sid Justice, Psycho Sid, whatever the hell you want to call it, he forgot about said ceiling, and at one point he just chucked Brian Pillman right into it. But again, if you wanted to believe wrestling was real, well, this was as real as it came. You also had Bob Eaton and Brad Armstrong doing what they do. Lex Luger came out with a great performance, which actually goes to show maybe he's better than we remembered. And if you like two big hosses fighting, you've got Vader versus Stan Hansen. And in that match, neither of these guys remembered that wrestling is meant to be a work. Number 29, WCW WrestleWar in 1992. All right, I know you're now shouting at the screen, what about SummerSlam 92, Simon? And really, that could be here as well. It's just an either-or situation, but I thought this one would create more conversation, so I'm just being an ass. Once again, it's the War Games match that you should go out of your way to see, not only because the Dangerous Alliance felt like such a badass group here, but the comeback of Sting will just remind you that he is one of the best good guys ever. I mean, as he starts fighting back, you are desperate for him to win. And I don't even know the guy. Fujinami and Louis Zuka also run into the Steiner brothers who try and kill them. And amazingly, Brian Pillman, there's that name again, has a pretty damn good match against Tom Zek, the Z-Man. Number 28, WWF King of the Ring 1993. This one is nice and simple because if it wasn't for Bret the Hitman Hart, I wouldn't be watching wrestling today. And if you want to see the excellence of execution live up to that name, this is the pay-per-view for you. Because seeing Bret go through the entire tournament to eventually win and having amazing matches with the likes of Mr. Perfect along the way will make you question why WWE doesn't bring the King of the Ring back today. I'm not talking about the version we had when Wade Barrett or Baron Corbin won it. That's no diss to those guys, it's not their fault. But here it felt so real. It felt like something you could properly invest in, and when Hart did win, my word, you just wanted to ring up your parents and tell them, but they don't care because they don't watch professional wrestling. I still love this, and you could probably argue, maybe I actually mean it, that it's the best King of the Ring WWF ever did. Number 27, WrestleMania 10 in 1994. I mean, this was just so well thought out. Not only do you have an incredible opener between Owen Hart and Bret Hart, but in the main event, Bret Hart then goes and wins the WWF Championship from Yokozuna, meaning he now has a challenger throughout the summer. Oh yeah, it's his brother Owen Hart who got a victory 2 hours before this. It's also the night where Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels had that ladder match, and my gosh, if you've never seen it, well, you won't think much of it these days, but you would not be getting the bouts you expect in 2020 if it wasn't for these two guys, and the Macho Man is on the show. And anytime the Macho Man is on the show, Simon Miller is biased hence why I'm wearing his merchandise. Number 26, the Royal Rumble in 95. Now in 1995, the American wrestling scene wasn't that great. It would be a year later when Hulk Hogan formed the NWO, which lit a fire underneath it, so when you are looking for pay-per-views, you're kinda starved for choice, but the Royal Rumble will always deliver. Kinda. Jeff Jarrett versus Razor Ramon is actually far better than you think. IRS versus The Undertaker kinda sucks, but it's got IRS in it. That's a hilarious gimmick. A dude that just wants to do your taxes, but boo you, I don't want to give you any money. And Diesel versus Bret Hart is just another tick in the Bret Hart can have a good match with anybody box. In the Royal Rumble match itself, you also had the whole both feet have to touch the floor rule being somewhat taken the mick out of because Shawn Michaels did get chucked over the top rope, but he held on and only one foot touched the floor before he got rid of the British Bulldog. But that's like historic now, so when you are watching it, it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum. 25, the WWF Survivor Series in 1996. We all talk about the WrestleMania 13 match between Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin, but no one ever talks about when they clashed here, and my word, while it's not as good as the one we just mentioned, it is still absolutely phenomenal, and if you can truly suspend your disbelief, you'll look around going, I actually think they're having a fight. The intensity is real. It totally solidified how good Bret Hart was and made you realize that Stone Cold Steve Austin was going to be a massive star. And even the main event of Shawn Michaels versus Psycho Sid, which on paper sounds terrible, is a rollicking good ride. And talking about letting you know, oh my gosh, this guy's really good at what he does, the Heartbreak Kid was proving it too. And if you need something else, you also get the debut of The Rock, who runs out here looking like a clone of the Dwayne Johnson you know today. I mean, you could convince someone this was his long-lost brother. It kind of boggles the mind. Number 24, WCW Bash at the Beach in 97. It seems kind of crazy to say it now in 2020 because World Championship Wrestling does have this reputation of just being a dumpster fire, but that was not the case in 1997. They were the biggest wrestling company in the world, and they were just pulling sensationalist ideas. Well, they were pulling them out their ass. It also summed up everything that was good about WCW at the time. The undercard was just full of dudes you'd never heard of, pulling off matches that made you want to scream and run through a wall. And in the main event, not only was Hulk Hogan still proving that he was doing it, but you also had the celebrity power of Dennis Rodman. And that does sound ridiculous now, I get it, but go and watch this. The crowd loves everything he does. He does like an arm drag at one point. They're like, Dennis Rodman did an arm drag. A goat could do an arm drag, but a goat ain't Dennis Rodman. Roddy Piper and Ric Flair also turn back the clocks and they have a barn burner too. None of this makes any sense, but when you're done, you will feel absolutely worn out because it's nuts. Number 23, ECW Heatwave in 1998. There is of course a shout for WrestleMania 14 when Stone Cold Steve Austin won his first WWF title. When you go through the whole thing, there's kind of peaks and troughs. That was not the case when ECW presented Heatwave because they were desperate to let you know what their MO was and for most of the guys to try and kill themselves. Mike Awesome and Masato Tanaka had one of their just absolutely stupid matches, and if you've never seen one of these, you owe it to yourself to check it out. And Bam Bam Bigelow and Taz, who just seemingly had a feud that would always deliver the goods, well, they delivered the goods. Once again, they just couldn't care less. If they were going to fight, they were going to fight. Jerry Lynn and Just Incredible also have a match that you could easily take and just pop into 2020 on any wrestling card in the world and nobody would shrug their shoulders. Kind of cool to watch now. Number 22, WWF No Mercy in 99. I'm not talking about The Godfather versus Mideon. Don't go in the comments and pretend that I am. That was just one of those WWF late 90s pay-per-view filler matches that would always crop up, but hey, at least you like the characters. Not naked Mideon, but whatever. It's the contrast between all the other bouts though, which is why I've selected it, because not only do you have the Good Housekeeping match between Jeff Jarrett and Chyna, which should absolutely suck, but is somehow entertaining, mostly because the fans love every single second, but you also have Edge and Christian taking on the Hardy Boys in a tag team ladder match, which basically set the scene for all the craziness that was gonna come down the line. It's also where Triple H finally emerged as a proper badass WWE champion and had an excellent match against Stone Cold Steve Austin. And if you enjoyed the Attitude Era, then you will enjoy all of this. Number 21, the Royal Rumble in 2000. I mean, where do we even start? You had the Hardy Boys now doing it with the Dudley Boys in a tag team title match, which is still brutal. And if it is absolute violence you're looking for, you go to the main event and you watch Triple H versus Cactus Jack. Mick Foley, that mad son of a gun, gets pedigreed onto a bunch of thumbtacks. And I'm standing here 20 years later and I still wince every time I witness it. 2 decades. Taz also makes his debut on this evening and his reaction is so big, it will make you want to become a professional wrestler, and the Royal Rumble that is won by The Rock is also just exceptionally crowd-pleasing. This gets a round of applause. I don't know how it's still so damn good, but somehow it is. Number 20, WrestleMania 17 in 2001. I don't need to tell you about this, you already know, and in fact the only debate you want to have, I know, is that I called it WrestleMania 17 and the official name is WrestleMania X-Seven. But don't call it that, because it sounds like some kind of pharmaceutical drug. Really though, this is probably the greatest pay-per-view that the World Wrestling Federation ever put on. It has everything you want, including a killer main event between Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, and the only teeny little blip is the fact that the rattlesnake turned heel at the end, and the Texas crowd didn't even realize. Then we had a problem with business and numbers and fan attendance. You don't need to worry about that on the night, you just have to enjoy the ride. You've also got the TLC match, which is a culmination of all the other matches we've already talked about. This was good then, this is good now, and even when you're an old man or an old woman or an old whatever, this will still be good. Number 19, SummerSlam 2002 in 2002. There are 2 significant reasons to watch SummerSlam 2002, and the first is Brock Lesnar, the first real star that WWE had built since Steve Austin and The Rock, the guy that the Beast would be taking on here this evening. He absolutely kills the Great One, takes his title, and then stands over him at the end like, ha ha, you nothing, Dwayne Johnson, you take your ass to Hollywood. Which The Rock was about to do, and why, during parts of this, he gets booed. On a complete other end of the scale though, you also have the returning Shawn Michaels, who engages in an absolutely epic street fight with Triple H, where you will turn into Shawn Michaels' dad, or Shawn Michaels' mum, or Shawn Michaels' guardian. Every time he takes a bump or throws himself off a ladder or goes through a table, you're like, Shawn, what are you doing? I know about your injuries, but my word, are you emotionally invested. You've also got Kurt Angle, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho. This is peak WWE in many ways, and arguably the greatest SummerSlam ever. Number 18, WrestleMania 19 in 2003. This is another one that will pull on your heartstrings, because of course it is the last night ever as a professional wrestler for one Stone Cold Steve Austin, who finally loses to The Rock at WrestleMania in their trilogy of matches. Is it the greatest thing you're ever going to see? No. But does it make you want to cry as if someone's cutting onions? Yes. You also have Chris Jericho and Shawn Michaels stealing the show and having the match of the night, but also, this is when Hulk Hogan took on Vince McMahon. And again, I get it, that shouldn't be any good, but this is just wrestling gaga up the 2-9. It is honestly so entertaining, and some of Vince McMahon's facials will have you laughing out loud. The main event between Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar is also sublime, until Brock Lesnar lands on his head, but still, whatever. If you can move past that knowing that he didn't die, WrestleMania 19 is actually pretty good. 17, WWE No Way Out in 2004. 2 words, Eddie Guerrero. That's right, I'm being biased, but if wrestling is all about emotional investment, you try and find me a moment that gets you more than this, especially because a few years later, Eddie would pass away. It still sucks so bad, and it's still so damn tragic. You also get John Cena versus The Big Show versus Kurt Angle in a very surprisingly fun match, and Chavo Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio is equally as entertaining, and that's always nice, because you get all of that before we get to the big Eddie Guerrero title win against Brock Lesnar, no less. And think of that visual, Brock Lesnar, Eddie Guerrero, but once you're into it, you won't think about it at all. No Way Out kicks ass. Number 16, WWE/ECW One Night Stand in 2005. WrestleMania 21 is probably the better show, and if you want to put that here, I'm not going to argue with you. But you don't understand, if you weren't an ECW fan, how much they loved their product and how pumped they were to see it one last time. And that's why One Night Stand, well, it's something special. And it's not just the matches, including the Sandman and Tommy Dreamer taking on the Dudleys in one of the most horrific matches you're probably ever likely to see, but the way we fed in the WWE guys is sublime. If you haven't seen JBL getting booed out the arena by all the fans, or Paul Heyman looking up at him and saying, dude, you're only champion because Triple H didn't want to work on SmackDown, you are missing out. Go to the WWE Network and rectify it, or watch Retro Ups and Downs for this very show here on What Culture. Mick Foley Cheap Pop. Number 15, WrestleMania 22 in 2006. Kind of overshadowed a little bit because Vince McMahon had decided that Rey Mysterio was going to live vicariously through the recently deceased Eddie Guerrero, which was very tough to watch. ultimately, when you go through this match by match, it lived up to the showcase of the Immortals. I mean, Mick Foley and Edge go flying through a flaming table, because why wouldn't you do that? The aforementioned Rey Mysterio has an absolute classic, or a classic under 10 minutes against Randy Orton and Kurt Angle. And you have another Vince McMahon match when he takes on Shawn Michaels, and once again, he knocks it out the park. I don't get how he keeps doing it. And I know you have The Undertaker versus Mark Henry on this card in a casket match, and Booker T taking on the Boogeyman. But look, it's all about how you feel when all is said and done. And was I worrying about those two matches? No, I was not. I was clapping my hands like some kind of damn seal. Number 14, TNA Sacrifice in 2007. So the headline to this card, if you don't know, for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship is Kurt Angle versus Sting versus Christian Cage. From name value alone, it gets a huge tick. But you also get loads of stuff that was unique to TNA back in the day, including former tag team partners Chris Harris and James Storm trying to murder each other in a Texas death match. But in the sub-main, it's also AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe. And watching that in 2020, well, it will send you all wibbly wobbly. Chris Sabian, Jay Lethal, and Sonjay Dutt have a great triple threat match for the X Division title, and you get Rhino versus Christopher Daniels, which is just another one of those matches where if you had told them where they were going to be right now, they would have punched you in the face and called you Charlie. Number 13, WrestleMania 24 in 2008. Mostly here because this was the first ever WrestleMania I attended live. It's also absolutely fabulous, especially because you get the retirement of Ric Flair. You get that Shawn Michaels super kick. You get tears all around the world. This is what WWE is great at. The Money in the Bank match is also one of the best you're ever likely to see, with all the guys as usual just flying around the place as if they don't care. And the main event of Edge versus The Undertaker actually had you believing that the dead man streak may be up here. You actually thought Edge was going to win. And afterwards, or after the fact years later, the Rated R Superstar said that was actually pitched. And I said, no way, Daddy-O, I don't want that on my shoulders. But you had to believe, you did believe, and closing the whole thing with The Undertaker holding the World Heavyweight Championship, well, you can call me a moron, but it made me feel great. Number 12, WWE Backlash in 2009. I'm throwing this in here because of Ricky Steamboat. Ricky Steamboat, who at this point was basically a pensioner, went toe-to-toe with Chris Jericho and had a better match than 99% of the human race. Even if you train to be a wrestler for the next 40, 50, 60, 70 years, you still wouldn't be as good as Ricky Steamboat. He doesn't make any sense. Christian puts on a surprisingly good match with Jack Swagger. You also get Matt Hardy versus Jeff Hardy, which while never 100% worked how you expected, is far better here. And the main event for the WWE title between Edge and John Cena, well, it's Edge versus John Cena, and I actually think that's a very underrated feud. And yeah, there's a weird world title change when Randy Orton wins it off Triple H after a tag team match. But look, man, it's WWE. They always doing that stuff. Number 11, WrestleMania 26 in 2010. Edge versus Chris Jericho was good. John Cena versus Batista was good. We never talk about everything with Bret Hart because it makes us sad and we don't want to be sad. But ultimately, this gets in here because it contains one of the greatest professional wrestling matches in history, The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. That's all I've got to say about it. You can decide whether you like this one or the sequel a little bit better, and maybe we're going to be talking about that in a minute, but you can still go back and watch this and buy into the whole ordeal. It is sports entertainment at its finest. That's all I'm going to say. I don't need to oversell it. There's no need. Number 10, WWE Money in the Bank in 2011. I tricked you. You thought I was going to talk about the other WrestleMania, but I'm not, because of course when it comes to 2011, you got to talk about Money in the Bank, which once again has one of the best matches in WWE history as John Cena and CM Punk clash over the WWE title. And I know not everyone buys into it, but Dave Meltzer gave this 5 stars, and believe you me, when you go through that 5-star system, he don't give too many to World Wrestling Entertainment. And you could probably argue that this is a whole card built on one match, but flippin' Nora, that match, the story was great, the build was great, it actually felt like these two didn't like each other, and when CM Punk comes out in front of his hometown Chicago crowd, who cheer him like he's about to cure all disease in the world, well, if you can't buy into that, you ain't a wrestling fan. It gave me goosebumps, and I'm sat here on my sofa like some chump in the UK. And I know that WWE bungled all this afterwards because CM Punk should have vanished for about 72 years. In fact, he should only have come back yesterday. But once more, when you're watching the pay-per-view, you don't have to worry about that. You just embrace the moment, and the moment is beautiful. Number 9, WWE Extreme Rules in 2012. The decision to have John Cena beat Brock Lesnar in an Extreme Rules match after the Beast had only just returned is absolutely stupid. Now again, it's wrestling politics. Brock left us all those years ago, so now our major star has to get a victory over him. if I take it and throw it over there, I can still really enjoy this event, mostly because of that main event. I think Brock Lesnar actually wanted to kill John Cena. I know I've said that a lot, but hey, that's what wrestlers are doing. Because seriously, my word, before he does eventually succumb to the man who can't be seen, Brock is just punching and kicking the absolute shit out of Cena to the point it gets a little uncomfortable. But for Pete's sake, the name of the event is Extreme Rules. That's exactly how you should be feeling. CM Punk also has a very good match with Chris Jericho. Daniel Bryan is finally allowed to have a proper match with Sheamus. And surprise, surprise, that's also good. And oddly, I like Kane versus Randy Orton. I don't know why, but I've seen it numerous times. I never don't end with a smile on my face. Number 8, New Japan Wrestle Kingdom in 2013. It was around about this time I started getting into New Japan Wrestling and learned about 2 very specific wrestlers. One was called Okada, one was called Tanahashi, and when I saw them clash here, I couldn't quite believe what I was seeing. It was genuinely unreal. And sure, they would have better matches along the way, but you could even go all the way to 2016 and things in the story in New Japan tie back into this. And as a man who is sucker for storytelling seed planting, well, I just can't get enough of it. For this entry, it's Nakamura and Sakuraba who take the idea of wrestling and throw out the window as they basically have an MMA match in the middle of the ring. And if you can believe it, Minoru Suzuki, who has just had a great G1 Climax tournament, as I'm talking, all the way back here, is still proving how good he is. I know it should be the other way around, but you could probably argue he's better now. That man doesn't make any sense. You also get to see Prince Devitt, who of course now is Finn Balor, have a match against Low-Ki and Kota Ibushi, and if that doesn't get the hairs on your arm going, maybe you did. Number 7, WrestleMania 30 in 2014. What an absolutely brilliant WrestleMania this was. Given that Daniel Bryan had to overcome Triple H in the first match and then go all the way to the main event to also overcome Batista and Randy Orton to finally become WWE champion. I mean, that is storytelling right there. And everything in between is just so entertaining. You could tell that WWE felt the need to smash it out of the park with the 30th anniversary birthday of WrestleMania, and they did just that. And you can tell how much people love the fact that Daniel Bryan had finally climbed to the top of the WWE ladder, because also on this night, the Undertaker's streak was sacrificed for Brock Lesnar, and some fans are still mad about it now. You remember that guy in the crowd who became a meme and went on to have like all this crazy success? That doesn't just happen. It was quite literally 3 decades in the making. Even then though, knowing that's coming gives it so much gravitas, and every single other match here is just so easy to watch. And even if you don't like it, it doesn't matter, because within 3 hours, DB is going to be holding that title, and you are going to be feeling like you stood right by him. He is just the best babyface ever. Number 6, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn in 2015. The first NXT TakeOver Brooklyn is so good because it just took everything about this kind of brand new promotion and pasted it everywhere, allowing wrestling fans to realize this ain't your usual WWE. We heading in a different direction. Kevin Owens versus Finn Balor is an underrated contest that doesn't get talked about enough, but the reason for that is because the Sasha Banks versus Bayley match is so good, it will just blow your mind. I mean, it genuinely is one of the best things that WWE has ever done, be it with women or without women. In fact, you can't call yourself a fan if you haven't seen it. That's not true. That's me being one of those internet morons. But I just wanted to underline how impressive it all is. Do you know what the opening match here is as well? Tyler Breeze versus Jushin Thunder Liger. I mean, that is just like pulling names out of a hat. My word, is tremendous. Number 5, NXT TakeOver Dallas in 2016. Another biased one for me because I was live in attendance that night, and I don't think I've ever felt anything like the arrival of Shinsuke Nakamura into that arena. I mean, it's like he's a different person now, given how WWE treats him. But if I had told you, oh, this is the most important person in the world, when you heard all the screams and the chants, you would have believed me. Finn Balor versus Samoa Joe is also top, even though it keeps getting stopped for excessive blood loss. And you have Chad Gable and Jason Jordan here proving that they are one of the best tag teams in the world. I do not understand what happened. Asuka also defeats Bayley for the NXT Women's Champion, which starts her rise to power. And look where she is now. Even though this is only 4 years old, it is just a wonderful walk down memory lane. Number 4, New Japan Dominion in 2017. If you like New Japan Pro Wrestling, and it's okay if you don't, no one is going to yell at you here, it's a safe place, then I don't think you can watch this card and find any negatives. It is practically perfect as long as you enjoy what they're trying to do. Takahashi versus Kushida is good, Tanahashi versus Naito may be even better still, but obviously this comes down to the main event between Kenny Omega and Okada that just takes everything that pro wrestling is meant to be and presents it to you. I mean, it goes on for about 76 years and it feels about 5 minutes. Described by many as the greatest wrestling match of all time, and even if you are a massive fanboy, those words don't just fall out of your mouth by accident. It was the fall by Omega himself which sums this all up, because he was so exhausted. Okada went for his finishing move, but he missed because Kenny collapsed in a heap. It's those small touches, man. And look, I wouldn't call myself the biggest New Japan fan in the world, but this is something else. It just is. There's no point even trying to argue it. Just enjoy it. Number 3, New Japan Dominion in 2018. 65 minutes Kenny Omega and Okada went here to once again open Pandora's box, which screamed, "Is this the best wrestling match ever?" Personally, for me, I'm not 100% sure, but I know a bunch of you watching will go, "Yes, Simon, shut your bald mouth. It absolutely was." Also, my mouth isn't bald, it's my head. I mean, you really have to see it for yourself before you make any decisions, but ultimately, if you enjoy professional wrestling that feels like a sport, then this is the match for you. You also get Chris Jericho taking on Naito as Jericho once again reinvented himself, and you can see the Young Bucks in their New Japan pomp here. It will absolutely confuse you why the hell they're on the outs with that company. You also just get that hard-hitting style that New Japan is now known for. It really is a terrific show. Number 2, AEW Double or Nothing in 2019. More of a momentous occasion than anything else. Many people like to look at Double or Nothing back in 2019 and go, "Ha, that is when All Elite Wrestling properly arrived on the wrestling scene." And I actually think they're right. Topped off by an arriving Jon Moxley, who had taken the Dean Ambrose character, buried him in his backyard, and become something oh so much more. You also get Kenny Omega losing to Chris Jericho in a no DQ match, that absolutely ridiculous tag team bout between the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers. And Cody defeated his brother Dustin Rhodes in a match that felt like it just fell out of a storybook. I mean, there was a hell of a lot of blood in this, but what more do you want? Adam Page also won the Casino Battle Royal, which in time we're going to look back on and go, that's when the man started climbing up to the top. Is this the best AEW pay-per-view so far? You would say maybe. Number 1, AEW Revolution 2020. And the reason I said maybe is because in 2020, AEW presented Revolution. Well, it was pretty damn good. Jon Moxley finally won the AEW World title, a belt he still holds today. MJF beat Cody in what you could say was a star-making performance, and we started to shine a light on one Orange Cassidy, who took on Pac. Man, how I miss Pac. You also had the Young Bucks taking on Kenny Omega and Hangman Page for the AEW World titles. And once again, do you know what people said about this match? It's the best tag team bout I've ever seen. As soon as that comes up in conversation, you gotta take it seriously, and I do. And I know we're not done with 2020 right now, but hey, I'm more than happy to be proved wrong, because it means I'm about to have a rollicking good time. And there you go, every single pay-per-view the last 30 years basically reviewed, but let me know, where did I go wrong and what did I miss? Then like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, head over to whatculture.com, read yourself some articles, follow What Culture on Twitter, What Culture WWE, and watch more videos here, shadowboxing on What Culture Wrestling. My name is Simon for What Culture. Thank you very much for joining me. That took far longer than you may realize. I need to go and have a shower.